Morning, Brad. How are you, sir?
Good morning. Good to
You
be with
voted? Have you voted yet? Did you stop by, or are you headed out later?
I have not. You're my
Not sure. I'm hoping that we have a good turnout in the state of Mississippi. Certainly, it's needed across the state, but some of these races are razor thin in some parts of the country. So we will see what happens. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Dick Hall, a guy that you knew quite well, and I knew him before. You know, he's been doing interviews with me for a long, long time. As a matter of fact, and I believe this is true, Brad, that the last interview he gave was with me on the air.
That's true.
And I have a couple of clips from that one. Now, let me start it off by just playing one, because Dick was a guy that he knew that we had to make a hard decision. And he knew it wasn't popular to even talk about the possibility of raising gas taxes. But in true fashion, he had no fear about that as far as his political office was concerned. But here's a little bit of what he said on that last interview.
If we'd adjusted the gasoline tax, which hadn't been done in 30 years, if we had done that 20 years ago, when I first started preaching that, we would have had that done. We would have had the kind of money that we needed to build and maintain our highways, but we didn't do it. Now we're faced with the coming of the electric vehicle. How are you going to build a highway if you don't have cars out there using fuel that you're paying tax on? What you're going to come to, and Oregon is already running some tests on this, it's going to probably come to where you're going to pay so much per mile. When you fill up gasoline, the technology is available that they can record what you paid last time and what you would pay this time, and it would be added to a charge in your vehicle or whatever. It eventually will get away from the fuel tax. If there's no fuel tax, obviously.
Yeah, and ironically, that interview was not that long ago.
No, probably within the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah. Your thoughts, sir?
And he was. I mean, he was very dogmatic about the need for additional resources in order to take care of the transportation system that we have in the way of maintenance and rehabilitation, but also in order to have the dedicated stream of reliable revenue in order to continue adding efficiency, capacity construction projects to the system and having the funds to do that. While he was on the commission, there was about a 10-year moratorium on those type of projects. And so we're having the conversation now about how do you fund, what mechanism is best to fund the transportation system. If I wish they would have done anything different, was 20 years ago when he started that conversation. I think looking back, it was a mistake to try to put all of our eggs in the basket of raising the fuel tax, because there's certainly other ways that other states are looking at providing dedicated streams of revenue, and I felt like we lost some time by virtue of the only conversation we were having was raising the fuel tax, and there are other options, you know.
That conversation, to his memory certainly too, but that conversation is going to have to be made or had someday and someday soon, one way or the other, whether Biden is in office or not for another 4 years. But electric vehicles, just through the marketplace, are getting better and better, and they are going to take a percentage. I'm not sure it's going to take 80 or 90%, not in our lifetime, certainly, maybe not in the next 15 or 20 years, but every time one is sold, that's gasoline tax doesn't go there. So something's going to have to happen.
And the vehicles that operate off of gas are becoming more and more efficient.
Yes.
And so I don't believe that ultimately you're going to be able to raise the fuel tax enough to accommodate for that. So I think we have to have another type of conversation about what that mechanism of funding would look like. When's
the last time that you talked to Dick?
Probably about 2 weeks ago via text. But actually, he and a couple of his old friends and I met the night before he went into the hospital. And he was struggling. That was probably about as bad as I had seen him. He was struggling that night, but still made it out. And we enjoyed a cup of tea, as he would call it, and catching up and telling old stories and laughing. And then it was the next morning that he went into the hospital, and I was able to text with him ultimately until he ended up in intensive care and Baptist rehab.
Did he completely get over COVID, or was that some of the just still hanging on?
I mean, he overcame COVID much better than what I expected him to. I believe what had happened was he had been fighting this lung condition for over 2 years, and a few days before he went into the hospital, his last sibling and brother, who he was very close to, passed away, surprisingly. And I think that had a large impact on him.
A guy who knows him also quite well, and in the world of politics and elsewhere, is a guy named Delbert Hosemann, the Lieutenant Governor of the state. Good morning, sir. How are you? Is the Lieutenant Governor there?
Yeah,
Perez?
this is he.
Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, Paul. How are you? Hi, Brad. How are you?
Good, Governor.
Yeah, we just got through voting, and we were just listening about Dick, and
Yeah.
he and I went back. I worked on his first campaign. We had investments together. We just were friends a long time, and Brad is right. He was a strong advocate for increasing the gas tax. I guess the last time I saw him, maybe a month or two ago, he was still telling me, you promised you were going to get more money
Yeah.
for roads. And in fact, this last year we did. State and federal were about $2.1 billion, and we gave $100 million. The legislature did the roads and structures out in the counties, and I expect we'll do the same again this year. It will be a record, more than has ever gone into roads and bridges in Mississippi. I guess we found an alternative, which is run our money well in the state of Mississippi and use the funds and additional funds for these kinds of things. So Dick's still with us, I think.
Yeah. What I loved about him is he was great on the air. He's a great interview, and some people are not, but Dick was a great interview, and he never held back, and whatever he thought, he let it go. And I hate to bring this up, but you can't talk about Dick without bringing this part up. In the Butch Brown era of come on, I mean that. I have seen him off the air and on the air, and I've never seen anybody get redder or more agitated. But I mean, those were some colorful days. Certainly after the advent of Katrina and the rebuilding process across the state, and certainly down on the Gulf Coast. But
I was working for him.
Were you?
When Butch Brown was hired? But
Yes.
There's one thing that nobody talks about with that I think is very important to mention. The two of them obviously did not get along, but both of them supported MDOT and the employees of MDOT. And I can't think of a single time, while they shot at one another quite often, I don't remember a single time that either of them went out from MDOT and shot back into the agency. They both were on the front line defending the agency, defending transportation, and they both never left that family or that team of trying to accomplish the mission of the department. And I think that gets lost in a lot of the issues that they had personally.
It's one of the great things about being on the air so long and having that history. The flavor of what went on back then, it was just. I wish we had the tapes of those. But Governor, one of the reasons, as Brad alluded to, it may have been two strong guys who were a lot alike, both loved the agency and loved Mississippi, and it came out.
It did, and both of them, I dealt with both of them at various and sundry times, and Brad's right about the fact that they were both pro-transportation, both pro-infrastructure to the person, and then their own personal, and I remember once, Brad, when Dick was banished out to Pearl at one point, out of the agency, and it was it was fodder for a lot of humor and a lot of laughs about things like that, and how excited Dick was when Mike got elected, and so it was just a lot of stuff that went on.
Dick was the last man standing.
Oh, absolutely. And there was wasn't there something about a helicopter back in those days too? That rings
looking for a barge, I think, on Mississippi River.
Yeah, it was something about that. But man, what some colorful days back in those days, and God, we're going to miss him. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, sir, thank you so much. I look forward to getting you back in studio and having a long-term conversation. I know you got to go, but thank you for chiming in. Appreciate it.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Brad did a great job yesterday, Paul, on it was humorous and sincere and principles and very personal. I thought Brad, you just did a really good job, son, yesterday.
Thank you. Very good. Very good. A guy named Charlie Ross, former state senator, will join us next after this. If I can take some liberty here before we get Charlie on, a note on the C-Smart text line from one of our guys that is with us every morning, and you may recognize the name. His name is Terry C. Burden. When I was a freshman senator in 1989, I was appointed to work with Dick Hall as the vice chairman of the Appropriations Committee. I'll never forget him and the fact that he gave me a chance to be a better senator by understanding the way the Appropriation Committee works. Served 19 or 20 years as vice chairman, and I owe that to him, Terry C. Burton. Speaking of former senators, there's another one on the line, Charlie Ross. Good morning, Charlie. How are you, sir?
Good morning. How are you guys?
I'm doing good. Brad is with us. We were talking about Dick Hall, and my understanding is that he goes back a long way with you.
It does. I came to the legislature in '98 and Senate, and Dick was chairman of appropriations, and that was a different day. Democrats controlled the legislature. Governor Fordyce was governor, but Democratic Lieutenant Governor put a Republican, Dick Hall, in charge of appropriations. I think that speaks well of Governor Musgrove and of Dick Hall.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I do believe that Governor Musgrove is going to be on with me this week or next week. I think it is later on this week on something else, so it'll be good to talk to him. But you are right, because back in those days, Brad, you and Charlie both, I mean, we talk about the proverbial phone booth that the Republicans could meet in. It was a little bit better back then, but not much.
When he was in the House of Representatives, Commissioner Hall was one of 4 out of 122 that were Republicans. And I think when he went to the Senate, it was less than 10. I don't remember what it was around 98.
Yeah.
It inched up to 15 or 17 by the time I was working at the party headquarters. He was in there. And that's how he and I met. Back then, he was very involved in the party itself and was running or serving as chairman of the United Republican Fund, which was our major fundraising arm of the state party.
Yeah.
And he traveled the state trying to recruit people into that program, and he came to Simpson County when I was a teenage county chairman there, and that's how he and I connected.
Charlie, the only person that was probably a bigger promoter was his wife, and is Jennifer. I mean, she was head of the Republican Women's Organization, wasn't she not?
Yesterday at visitation, I said to her, I go all the way back to Fordyce with both you and Dick. She was very active in the Fordyce campaign. She's been president of just about every Republican women's organization in the state, including the statewide organization, chairman of the Pearl River Water Supply District. She and Dick made a great team. And, when Dick was running, Jennifer was right there with him.
Did we lose him? Okay.
No, he's still there.
Oh, he's still there. I'm sorry. Well, Brad, Charlie, thank you, sir. Appreciate it very, very much. It's good to hear from you, and I just wanted to spend a couple of times from other people having a chance to chime in here and just kind of remembering the former Commissioner Dick Hall, which, as you mentioned, was served in the House and in the Senate. Brad, I talk about this a lot when we talk about the long history of the state. And if you Google it up and you look at all of the governors in the state of Mississippi from the time that we became a state, and you see that, you talk about 140 years, give or take a few, 140 years under total control of the Democrats. And when you put it in that perspective, it hasn't been that long that Republicans have had certainly a supermajority.
No, Commissioner Hall, Charlie mentioned him chairing appropriations. He was the first Republican to chair appropriations in over 100 years in the Senate.
Yeah.
And Republicans didn't have control of the legislature until I had left as party chairman, which was, about 10 years ago. So it's been about 10 years.
Well, that was post Billy McCoy days, basically, wasn't it?
Right, that's correct.
So, I mean, it was, and then you look at what has been done. And I don't think people give the Republican Party, even though we have some squawks here and there's some disagreements, but that's part of the legislative process, don't give the Republicans in this short period of time the amazing successes that they've had.
Well, the only caution I would give to our party is that I don't want us to become kind of the way the Democrats were when the Republicans were irrelevant.
Yeah.
The Democrats had control of everything, and they just fought one another. And that's the way they were prior to Fordyce. When Fordyce came in, they all had a common enemy. And then eventually we took control of the government. And now that we have complete control, all 8 statewide officials, both chambers, I would hope that we would recognize history, learn from that, and work to not fall in the same trap the Democrat Party did.
Wisdom that is worth a lot from what you just said. You're absolutely right. And it seems like the more dominant you become, the more you start turning in on each other, and hopefully that will not happen. I bet you could tell. Well, you may not be able to tell. I bet you could tell some Fordyce stories too, but I don't think we need to get into that.
Yeah, he was another great mentor of mine. When he appointed Commissioner Hall Transportation Commissioner, he kind of hoped that Dick would go to work to abolish the commission. And then Commissioner Hall went on to serve 5 full terms and became the longest-serving commissioner.
Yes.
In history. So,
amazing.
He was a colorful guy too.
Brad, thank you, sir. While I've got you here, any other news as far as MDOT's concerned that you'd like to share before you leave?
No, our folks are hard at work. In the last fiscal year, we awarded over $964 million worth of contracts. That's an 80% increase in the average of the previous 5 years, so we're going to see a lot of orange barrels in the years to come. So.
Is that $80 million on lottery helped out? I mean,
it's tremendously. It's
do we get matching funds with that?
No, that's purely state dollars, and the commission has dedicated that to mainly 2-lane highways around the state to make sure that they're being rehabilitated properly. And the last count I had, it was somewhere around 2,500 lane miles that have been rehabilitated on 2-lane highways due to that. So it's been a very, very good program. And
somebody asked me what the cost was to just repave about a mile, and I said I had no idea.
I don't either.
I heard $1 million one time. Yeah,
it's ever changing.
It ain't cheap, we know that.
That's right.
It's always good seeing you, my man. Appreciate it very much. The 2023 is coming up. Anything that you want to spotlight on some of the agenda that you're putting forth or you'd like to see happen?
Well, the lieutenant governor touched on it. The legislature and the governor were very good to MDOT last year, and hopefully that what we did last year will be a base from which we'll start building this year that will allow us to have the resources and tools necessary to keep pushing out work and doing what the taxpayers expect us to do.
Anything to mention as far as the big factory that's going to be the Steel Dynamics that the highway department will figure into that one over in Columbus?
We're in those conversations now, and nothing I can really.
I got you. Got you. Look, thank you, man. Appreciate it very, very much. I'll let you go. I know you're going to vote, and which we will be doing, hopefully, in the next couple of hours and get that done. But please do not forget, the polls are open till 7 o'clock tonight, so go